So can you hear me in the back? Marlo, can you hear me? Sweet, that's awesome. So I was just checking to see if that sound I heard was feedback or what.
Just cranking and rocking.
How about now? Is that better?
Way too loud here.
Okay. Well, I'll see what I can do about making it louder. I'm going to make it quieter here, but way louder over there. Can I just move like one speaker over there? That'd be awesome. Well, there's a fine line between sound check and torture if you do it right, you know? Especially with one of our guys up here today having an ear infection. It's a good thing I like Alan, or else we'd be like, squirt, turn that thing up and see what happens. And so here we are for the afternoon. We have a few people I haven't seen before, and we have most of the people that I see on a fairly regular basis. This is going to be, well, kind of, let's see who walks in after we get started day. It could be people we know, it could be people we don't know, it could be people that are going to be interested, it could be people we scare off, in which case Chris is going to throw a bottle at my head. Which I've kind of gotten used to, really. Actually, I'm going to give him a good reason right now to throw a bottle at my head. I used to live over on 32nd and North Clark in Chicago. But point taken that I'm actually from Wisconsin and I'm a huge Green Bay fan, so I felt like I was some kind of like spy wandering around. Occasionally I would give it away wearing my Bart Starr jersey. Yeah, pretty much. It's like, you know, he'd walk into church and get hit by lightning. I would walk into here and like take a bottle. Hi, Dave, nice to see you, bonk. Could you make the next one full just so that way I could enjoy it more? Oh, there we are. Okay, we can go with that. Actually, I'm also Canadian, so if we can just like turn the cheese curds into poutine, we'd be good to go.
We actually do poutine also.
Oh, really? I'm on it. I'm so on that.
I told you this place was awesome.
All right, Joe, I didn't doubt you for a second, man. I'm telling you. And this is spoken word. It was kind of fun to talk to Chris about it. He's like, so what does you guys do? Do you tell stories? Do you do poems or whatever? And we keep trying to define it, and basically it's anything that isn't us getting up here singing, and you never know. With that in mind, I'm kind of praying that Mikey won't. Oh, for all I know, you sound. For all I know, yeah, you could sound like Luciano Pavarotti. For all I know. Yes. And so I was sitting around getting started trying to figure out what am I going to open with today. And I was talking to Sherry in London, and we were comparing notes on London's concussion. And if anybody who knows me should be aware, if there's one subject I'm an expert on, it's concussions. After 7 of them, you pretty much have the entire thing down to a science. And so I break the stories down about those into the really interesting ones, or the really violent ones, or the intense ones. But the one that turned out to be the most surreal was, as I think of it, number 6. It happened on a business trip. I was helping to set up gear at a place in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, setting up machinery. And on one of our days off, some of the technicians walked up to us and said, hey, we know a guy, he's the head of materials management at the Calgary Saddle Dome, and he's got a pickup hockey game. Does anyone want to play? And like the rest of my coworkers are all Nebraska football fans and don't know asshole from elbow about skates. I, on the other hand, in case you can't miss my inability to deal with heat, and of course my extremely pale covering, am partly Canadian, so I was like, yes, I'm in on this. Because if you're a hockey fan, the idea of playing a game, any kind of game, at the Saddle Dome is kind of like doing batting practice at a Major League Baseball park. And so we go there, and the guy leads us in, and we walk past the Calgary Flames dressing room, where we were told not to touch anything, which is good, because I would have molested Jerome Iginla's jersey, and that would not have gone out well at all. We got dressed up in their gear, and we went out and we started playing. And I was doing pretty well, going in, going out. After about the 4th time, getting into my line, I come up and over, and I go diving for this puck. And that's when my feet came out from underneath me. And the next thing I know, I'm headed toward the wall, and there's nothing I can do. What I didn't know is that when my feet came out from underneath me, the guy behind me, I basically leg swept him. So as I was falling toward the wall, he was falling at the same time too. So as my head bounced back up off of the wall, he was still coming down with his stick. And the only way to really define what happened next was, BAM! And knowing that you're immediately screwed at that moment. You hit the ground, and the next thing you know, you're like, I have no clue where the hell I am. I'm not sure where I am, who I am. I'm wearing skates. There are people going by. Is this a hockey game? I mean, a hockey game. Okay, but I can't stand up. This is really odd. And they immediately stop the game. They pull me back up. And that's when the round 2 of the weirdness began, because then I had to take a nice long trip to the hospital. And it was probably shorter than I think it was, but it was kind of more like a surreal sort of like flashes of waking up, and then there are people like looking down at you with like medical gear, and it's almost nightmarish at that point. How you doing? Welcome to our little madhouse. Have a beer, enjoy. And so we arrive in the hospital, and they look at me, and like one pupil's about the size of, I don't know, a pinprick, and the other pupil's about this big, and they're like, yes, Mr. Nesbitt, you have a concussion. It's very odd when I fail the concussion test. I have been told by people that I sleep with that I actually do it in my sleep. I've practiced it that many times. But I couldn't get my name right. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't quite realize where I was. It was not working out real well. And the next part of failing the concussion test came when I'm sitting around, and suddenly I realized that I'm alone, and people are talking, and they're making syllables, but nothing is connecting with anything that feels like language in my head. It's kind of like, it's like some sort of surreal thing where the Charlie Brown parents are talking, wah, 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 wah. I don't know a thing of what they're saying. I'm getting more and more scared as I realize I might have knocked language completely out of my head. This is getting more and more terrifying. They keep talking. I can't hear a word they're saying. I don't understand a single thing that's going on. My knuckles are getting tight. Which is when a friend of mine from work stopped by. His name is Rich Dozier. Rich is about 6'3", 310, and the jolliest, happiest guy you would ever want to meet. He makes a great Santa Claus. And Rich comes walking in, and the first words out of his mouth made me feel so much better. Fuck, man, what happened? I realized I understood Rich, and then that kind of like smacked the haze out of my head. And I realized, oh wait, every natural French speaker in Calgary works in the fucking emergency room. And so the next part of this was Rich and my former roommate Andy, who is about also 6'3", and I think he's a mild like 270. If somebody has a concussion, the last thing you really want them to do is to go to sleep. And so there's Rich on one side and Andy on the other side, and any time that my head started going like this, the other one of them would go, bam, and I wake up, And I'm reasonably certain that it went from concussion 6 to 6.25 to 6.5. Not quite 7, but we were well on our way there by the time they were done. This also meant my business trip was over, and that meant I had to fly back to Omaha and then over to Columbus by way of Calgary. And somewhere along the line, you kind of have to stop and let the immigration people talk to you. Welcome. And so we stop in Minneapolis. And I had a very strange relationship with the immigration guy in Minneapolis. It was always the same guy, too. I stopped there 6 times, and 5 times he pulled me out of line. Apparently I should have realized that if I'm in Western Canada, a place with a lax attitude toward marijuana laws, that being the guy in the jeans, the black t-shirt, and the long hair back then was kind of a tip-off for people to just kind of pull you out for some reason. And so I get pulled out of line yet again. And I have a nice guy from Delta who's kind of guiding me along. And I'm trying to find all of my identification, and this is just getting weirder because I can't find anything, which is when I drop the nice bottle of pain pills in front of him. I should point out, other stories that I have told over the last year or so include the fact that I used to hang out with people that moved, multiple kilos through airports. I've now dropped 10 Percocets in front of this guy, and he looks at it. Are these pills yours? I have a concussion, and I'm at this point in time going, yeah, who else could they possibly be? They fell out of my jacket. I can't quite see your name on here. Are you sure that this prescription belongs to you or was prescribed to you? And all I could think of was the irony gods are laughing themselves sick. I've seen people move multiple amounts of white powder through airports before, and I'm about to go to jail for 10 Percocet. But finally, after about 5 minutes of him pulling the label back, he was able to sort out, oh wait, these are your pills, so it's all good. Excuse me. So the next phase of this trip was getting to Omaha and then taking a 2-hour drive back to Columbus, Nebraska. I get home, I finally feel safe, and I finally fall asleep. And that's when the next odd moment was, because one of the things, if you have a concussion, what you should do is carry a notebook with you and write down anything important that happens. Because your short-term memory has taken a slow boat to some place that isn't here. And you will not remember anything 5 minutes after it happens. And so, I don't know, I was asleep for, it could have been 2 hours, it could have been 2 days, I don't know. But I get a phone call and I realize I'm talking to my dad, so I know that if I'm talking to my dad, it's probably important. I write down whatever he talks about and I go back to sleep. I wake up the next day and I don't remember the phone call, but I do remember I have a notebook, and the notebook has stuff written in it. And I look, and inside the notebook it says, "Please contact Dad about grandfather's death."